really the idea behind a CMO, or in my case, a virtual CMO, is somebody that's just working with companies to help them develop out a strategy. And so often, marketing is something that just kind of sits on the side. They don't really have a strategy. They're just kind of guessing at it. And that's a very expensive and frustrating thing to do.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Biz Reveal. When starting a business, one of the most overlooked areas is marketing. And I know when we think of marketing, most of us are actually thinking of advertising, not marketing. There is a difference. Marketing involves being able to showcase your company in a positive light, often by showing customers or clients why they should trust your company and purchase your goods or services. Now, advertising is more specific and simply promotes a particular service or product. Marketing is more about trust. But how do you build that trust? In other words, how do you effectively market your business? Originally from Wisconsin, but now based in Orlando, Florida, Eric Dickmann is an executive leader with over 30 years of experience in marketing, product development, and digital transformation. He's worked with large global companies and small startups to develop strategies to bring innovative products to market. After years of working in the financial services and information technology industries, including 18 years at Oracle Corporation, Eric ventured into the world of entrepreneurship by founding the Five Echelon Group. The company focuses on building and executing marketing strategies for small and mid-sized businesses. As part of the service offering, Eric serves as a virtual CMO for multiple companies. Eric is also the host of a weekly podcast, The Virtual CMO. The show is geared towards marketing professionals looking for tactics and strategies to improve their company's marketing trajectory. Now, you can go to his website at fiveechelon.com or email him directly at edickman@fiveechelon.com. Thanks for joining us today, Eric.
Hey, it's great to be here, Craig. Thanks very much for having me on your show.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Now, marketing is one of my favorite aspects of entrepreneurship, so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today and see what we can learn. Can you just start off just letting our listeners know how you got started in marketing and what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I originally started out in the financial services industry and worked there for many years on product development for a number of banking products. And then as my career kind of progressed, I started to move more and more on the marketing side of things and trying to work on how we brought those products to market and how we inform people about what the various products and services did. I spent the majority of my career at Oracle. And, you know, you've got a big company there that sells lots of different products and services. And the challenge for someone in marketing is to say, okay, maybe everybody's familiar with the big brand, but do they actually know the specific things underneath that brand that can meet their particular needs? And so that was my challenge when I worked at Oracle, specifically in their financial services industry vertical, to try to help people understand what Oracle did in that particular vertical to meet their needs.
Okay. So it's just basically trying to get them to know you, you specifically actually as a person or as a business owner, as well as know the company and who they are and what they do and what they stand for.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, you know, the genesis or really the focus of marketing is on awareness, on building awareness of your brand, your products, your services, and then driving demand for those products and services. So, you know, the interest is the early phase of what you're trying to do in marketing, and then that eventually, hopefully, leads to a product sale.
Awesome. Question for you. As I was introducing you, and I used that acronym CMO. As a CMO, what traits are important to have? You know, for example, if I'm a business owner and I want to hire somebody to be in charge of my marketing, you know, what type of person or credential should I be looking for in a CMO?
You know, that's really a great question because CMO is typically something that you think of at a large company, you know, someone that works with a big executive management team, a chief financial officer, chief information officer, everything like that. But really the idea behind a CMO, or in my case, a virtual CMO, is somebody that's just working with companies to help them develop out a strategy. You know, I love focusing on entrepreneurs, on small businesses, mid-sized businesses. These are really the heart of our economy. And so often marketing is something that just kind of sits on the side. They know it's something that they need to do. And every once in a while they dabble in it, or they hire somebody. Maybe it's somebody fresh out of school to do some social media, or let's buy some Facebook ads, but they don't really have a strategy. They're just kind of guessing at it. And that's a very expensive and frustrating thing to do, because marketing is a long-term play. It takes time to develop interest in your products and services. And so really the job of a CMO, or in my case, a virtual CMO, is to help companies build out a more comprehensive strategy so that they can spend their money wisely and get the biggest bang for the buck, if you will. And I think if I take that one step further, the idea behind a virtual CMO is a lot of companies don't want to hire sort of an executive to be a full-time member of their team. Their business isn't big enough, or they just don't feel that they want to spend that kind of money. And so what a virtual CMO or a fractional CMO does is they spend a part of their week working with that particular business. So it's a part-time sort of executive for a company.
And you're talking about that marketing strategy. So as a CMO or somebody in your position where you're helping all these different companies out, how do you determine a company's marketing strategy? There's so many different types of companies out there that offer different services and products. They have different mission statements. So how do you determine the best marketing strategy for each one?
That's a great question, because I think this is something that a lot of companies miss as part of the process. And really, one of the first things that you want to do is you want to understand who is your target customer. So in marketing buzz, we really call that the customer persona. And when you're developing these out, you really go as far as naming this customer persona, this fake ideal customer that you want to go after. What are their attributes? How old are they? Where do they live? What kinds of things do they like to buy? Where do they go out to eat? You really get fairly specific about who is this target customer. And then would that target customer be interested in the kinds of products and services that you're selling? And once you sort of have that, then you can start to say, okay, now what kind of tactics can we employ as part of our overall marketing strategy to say, okay, this is going to be the kind of thing that this target person is going to be interested in looking at. So, for example, if you have a target customer and you look at them and say, well, this isn't the kind of person that normally spends much time on Facebook, why would you spend any money on Facebook advertising?
Makes sense.
It helps you really focus in on where the areas of most effective result are probably going to be found.
And I'm assuming some of that information, when you're looking at the demographics of your particular field or in the particular area, like if you actually had a storefront, for example, you'd want to take the demographics of where you locate that storefront into consideration before you're leasing office space, I would assume, right? To be able to focus more on the group that you're in. You obviously wouldn't want to be in an area that is not primarily the types of people that you would want to market to.
Well, that's exactly right. They've talked a lot of times about, McDonald's. Are they, a fast food company or a real estate company?
Right.
And why on every corner that there's a McDonald's, is there a Burger King across the street and, a Wendy's and a Chick-fil-A? Why are they all right there? There's a lot of research that goes into figuring out where do they want to put those businesses, because that's where they believe the traffic and their target customers are going to be. And it's a critical part of marketing, because there's something that we talk about in marketing and product development called product market fit. And that's this idea that, do you have a product that has a specific place in the market? Is there a fit for what you're making? Is there demand for what you're trying to produce? And what happens, I know your podcast focuses on entrepreneurs and new businesses, and this is a real challenge, I think, for a lot of young businesses, is that they get really excited about a concept. I'm sure we've all seen this. Let's take a restaurant as an example. You drive by, you see a building under construction or a space inside a strip mall that's being developed for a restaurant or some kind of a business, and you look in and you just scratch your head. It's like, I don't get it. Why is this business going in here? This doesn't make any sense here. And I think a lot of times what happens is that people just get very excited about a concept, about their product or their service, but they don't do that research to see, is there even any market for it? And, sometimes we're wrong and it ends up being a big hit because they were onto something that we didn't catch on to initially. But I would say 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. If you're scratching your head wondering, what is this business going in here for? There's probably a mismatch.
So with that research, where does somebody begin to research that? Where do you find that type of information at?
So a great thing is just start to think, who are the competitors? It's pretty rare for somebody to come up with something that is so unique that there's no competition for it, because even a product or service that you could say there's nothing else like it in the marketplace, you're still competing to get somebody's dollars, right? If they're going to spend money on your product or service, they're not going to spend it on somebody else's. So where are you pulling that money away from? And that is one of the easiest ways to start to do it. And you could say that there are companies out there that are mainly serving the enterprise space, that they have a product that's especially suited for very large companies. Maybe there's another product that's similar in design, but it's really more suited toward the mid-market. Or there's something that's really very affordably priced that's for small businesses. So you can start to see what are the competitors' target markets, and then you can further start to refine it from there. It depends a lot on the type of product that you're selling, right? We all drive a car, but there's a huge range of options, right? You can go from everything from, a Range Rover, a Mercedes, or Lexus, all the way down to, a Honda or Chevrolet. They've all got 4 wheels, but what's the difference there? They're all targeting a specific segment of the marketplace. So the competition is the best place to start, I think. Yeah,
and you're kind of piggybacking off of somebody else's research that way, because they had to do the same thing. And if they're not succeeding, well, obviously that's maybe an area that you don't want to get into, or at least in that particular demographic that they're in. So it's kind of nice to learn from other people's mistakes. And again, that's part of what this podcast is about. Is there's plenty of mistakes to be made out there. Make original ones. Don't make the mistakes that other people have made. So learn from them and then move on from it. So, and I think that we can all agree that business success is always directly relative to the satisfaction of customers, right?
Sure.
Can you dive into, customer relationship management? What is a customer relationship management? What is it, and what does it focus? What's it focus on?
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm a big advocate of this. Customer relationship management, it's not a new concept. It's been around for a long time. In fact, I was with a company for many years called Siebel Systems, and they were really one of the grandfathers of this whole idea around customer relationship management. Now that moniker has kind of been taken by Salesforce.com. But customer relationship management is really this idea of how are you serving your customers and what do you really know about them? I'm sure we've all had the experience of calling into a call center about a particular problem and them not knowing who you are. Maybe you took the time to punch your information into the phone system. An agent finally answers the phone and they say, "Can I have your account number?" Why did you punch that in the first place if they don't know what it is?
Right.
And then, you say your problem and they say, "Well, no, I've got to transfer you to this other department." And it's like, well, why did I pick that option in the menu? And why didn't they know? Why couldn't they solve my problem? And the worst is when they have no record of your previous call. They don't know that you called in before, that you talked to somebody who said they were going to resolve a problem and they didn't do it. This is all around customer relationship management. It's that visibility into a customer's complete relationship with an organization. And so when somebody is calling in, you really know them. It's shocking when you call into an organization and they say, is this about, your last call? I see that we resolved that, or there's something that's still pending, but they know why you're calling, right? I think, we're recording this in early June and we live here in the state of Florida, and the news is just full of all of these complaints about people who are trying to get their unemployment benefits, and what a disastrous job the state has done in communicating and understanding people and, what they've done, what they've submitted, what they've paid, all these things. It's as if they have no idea who their customers are, and their customers are the residents of the state. And it's an example of customer relationship management that has gone horribly wrong because they have no idea about what anybody is doing or what interactions they've had with the organization.
And it's all about communication and organizing those notes. And frankly, I'm a firm believer that there's really no excuse for that these days. There's so many CRM systems and ways to keep notes on your customers. And even if it's been a year since you talked to them, and there's no way that all of us can remember every customer we've talked to, especially if it's been a year. But if you have that organized and you keep those notes, in a system where as soon as that number pops up, you got, all their information there, you certainly can talk to them as if you had just talked to them yesterday, which makes people feel really good. And like you remembered them. It's like a relationship, a friendship.
That's exactly right. My first name is Eric, E-R-I-C, and I am amazed at how many people spell my first name wrong. And this is oftentimes in emails where my name is, part of the email address, or, I've got a signature line on there. I mean, literally every week I get messages that are spelled wrong. And, maybe that seems like a little thing. People misspell my last name a lot too, but the first name, that one's a little harder to understand because, especially if you're having a conversation with somebody, it's like, didn't we just talk? Do you know who I am?
Right.
But it just sort of shows that you don't really know. And it doesn't take that many missteps with an organization before all of a sudden the trust falls apart and you, as a customer, you no longer feel an affinity to this particular organization. I think one of the reasons that Amazon has just been so stellar at what they're doing is they just keep providing people more and more information. There was a day, it seems a long time ago now, but it wasn't, when you would order something and have no idea when it would show up. And now, you order something and say, well, Amazon told me it's going to be here Thursday, so it's going to be here Thursday. And now we've come to expect that, right?
At a certain time, even. We even know exactly
right.
what time on Thursday it's going to be here. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And now they've gone to the further step of, you get a message and say your delivery is 9 stops away, and then you get a text message that says it's at your front door and here's a picture of it. They've just gone above and beyond to communicate. And so you really feel sort of this personal connection with the brand because you say, I like this. They seem to know me and they seem to know that I'm interested in knowing where my product is. And you compare that to some other businesses where you order something and you have no idea when it's going to ship, when it's going to arrive, and it can be a complete surprise. Usually when you're on vacation is when it shows up.
I think that was probably the most perfect example you could have given because I agree. Not that I'm certainly not making any money from Amazon. In fact, it's definitely the other way around. But right. They have done a phenomenal job, especially for such a large company, because sometimes when companies get so big that you lose that personal touch, and they've done just the opposite. And they've actually gotten more and more personal the bigger they've gotten. And I think that you mentioned that taking a picture. I just received something yesterday afternoon. I'm kind of an Amazon junkie, but there it is sitting on my front step, and I'm actually watching the guy walk back to the van, in the street there. So you're right. I think that's a perfect example. You mentioned the unemployment thing right now because of the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
So going on that, COVID-19. It's changed the way that most of us do business, now, 21st century. I know we're already 20 years into it, but everything has changed in the last few months. With the increase in remote work and the people that are working from home, how do you see that affecting the work-life balance for employees as well as what it may mean for companies as a whole in the future?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting topic because I myself have been a remote worker for many years, and it's taken some time to adjust to it, to figure out, what is the best way to work and how you can accomplish things from home in the way that you could have in an office. But once you sort of get your routine down and once you understand sort of what the boundaries are and that you have to set specific time to do certain tasks, it's incredibly fulfilling to be able to work in an environment where you're not spending hours and hours in your car, commuting back and forth, dealing with that stress. I've heard of so many people reporting stories, especially in, big cities where they're like, oh my gosh, I've gotten so much of my life back because I'm not spending all that time in a car commuting. But it's a challenge. But I think a lot of companies during COVID-19 have seen that, oh yeah, we can actually support a remote workforce. I think one of the challenges that managers have faced is that they're actually the bottleneck to a lot of remote work. It's not the employees themselves. And it's because managers oftentimes feel uncomfortable when they can't see people working because they don't trust that people are doing the work. And I think that's a terrible way to look at it, because if you don't trust somebody, why'd you hire them? There has to be some level of trust, whether they're in an office or whether they're at home. What I think it really takes is a clear definition of what someone is responsible for. What are the tasks that they are responsible for doing? When are they responsible for getting those done? And what is the level of acceptable work that they need to put in to make sure that the quality is there, when they finish a project? And if those things are in place, who really cares if they're working on it at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m? As long as they're using their time to get their jobs done, I don't think it matters so much. I think that there is too much of a focus in the business world about saying, okay, I'm paying you for 8 hours, so I want to see you for 8 hours, logged into a system or on chat or sitting at your desk or whatnot. I wish that we would move more towards a productivity model where we say, I'm paying you to get a certain job done, get it done. And then if that takes you 5 hours, or if that takes you 8, or if that takes you 10, so be it. I think you'll find that a lot of people who work remotely, what they'll say is they actually end up working more than less. Sure, they get up and they put a load of laundry in, or they go mow the lawn, or they go do something like that. That's fine. People should be taking breaks during the day and stretching out. It makes them more productive. But a lot of times they're also working at their desk at 8 o'clock at night. So I think it's going to change dramatically. And I think there's going to be more remote work. And I think there's also going to be fewer full-time employees, because I think companies are realizing they can get by with less. So it's probably going to be great for contract workers, people who are doing some part-time gigs. I think we're going to see this unemployment level go down very slowly, because a lot of these people aren't going to be hired back, unfortunately.
I agree. And actually, you just brought up another great question that just now popped in my head is, if we do more of the remote work, and it does affect what is considered to be a full-time worker or a salaried worker, because like you mentioned, that's all based off of hours per week worked, right? Full-time versus part-time is that 32-hour marker there. And it's all about, again, tasks. If you're tasked to do a job, frankly, I prefer somebody to get a job done in 20 hours that's taking somebody else 40 hours, because that means they're a lot more productive. I can just get a lot more tasks done with somebody like that. But in turn, if they're no longer considered a full-time employee because they didn't work that 32 plus hours, how would that affect maybe say benefits, things like that
Sure.
are based off of hours per week worked as opposed to tasks that are performed? So that might create that'd be another episode for us, wouldn't it?
Right, exactly. No, I think that's true. I think these are all questions that are going to have to be figured out, because you're right. I mean, there are a lot of people that are paid hourly that, maybe it should be more of a salary job. And look, there are some things, like if you're working in a call center, we've seen a lot of that get distributed out so that people can, sit at home and, calls can be routed over the internet. No problems there, but they have to be available. When that phone rings, they have to be there to do it. So going out and mowing the lawn or something like that isn't an option for those people. So they are actually being paid to be available for a specific period of time. But I think if your job is to get, bundles of work done over a certain period of time, to me, that is really moving more towards a salaried model, and you get it done as you need to.
If you had one piece of advice for businesses, regardless of industry, to be able to mold into this, I hate saying the term because it's so overused right now, but it's our new normal. And I'm a little thankful for it, because I think it is going to make many businesses and just business in general more efficient. And I think it opened the eyes to the technology that we've had available to us for many years that just has not been utilized in the manner that it really could have been. But if you had one piece of advice for these businesses, or again, the whole industry of business, what would it be as far as the way things are going towards the direction it's moving towards?
Yeah, so I'm going to swing it back a little bit towards marketing, because I am a marketing guy. And my advice to businesses, marketing is really the engine that drives growth. I talk about this with my clients all the time, that marketing is the engine that drives growth. If you want leads, if you want new customer opportunities, you can't just flip a switch and have them magically appear. If that's the way it worked, you basically put the marketing industry out of business, because it just doesn't work that way. It's a long-term investment in driving people to your brand and to your products, to build that awareness, to build that trust, and to finally make those sales. And so my advice to businesses is to keep that investment going. I think one of the biggest mistakes that businesses do is they play with marketing like a faucet, right? They spend a little bit of money, then they turn it off, then they spend a little bit of money, they turn it off, and they're looking for very quick results from those efforts. And sometimes you can do things like if you're a business to consumer, you can say, okay, we're going to do a coupon or a promotion or something like that as a way to sort of drive sort of near-term results. But as that promotion fades away, then all of a sudden you're back to where you were. And that, I'm sure you've seen businesses in your own community that they get people so addicted to those promotions that people won't even go to those businesses unless there's a sale or something going on. Does anybody go to Macy's when they're not running a sale?
Right.
I think it's very tricky. So businesses have to keep that faucet open. But I think what's changed now because of COVID, and this was coming anyway, is you have to use data. You have to use the data that's available to you to see what's working, to see how customer preferences are changing, where money is being spent and where it's not. And you constantly have to keep refining what you're doing. You can't sort of turn something on and then walk away from it, and then 6 months later expect it to be performing as well as it was. Even our websites that we all have today, right? Those things are not static at all. You have to make changes to those all the time to keep them fresh, to keep them current, to keep them up to the standards that Google wants, so that Google even displays you in their search results. It's a constant investment. And so if you're a small business and you don't have a big budget, okay, that's fine. But figure out a strategy that can keep that marketing investment constant. Experiment, try different things, but keep the investment constant. And then as you start to grow, build that investment over time.
Yeah, pay attention and adapt.
Yes, absolutely. You've got to adapt. You've got to adapt, and you've got to use analytics and data to really look at real world results to see what's working and what's not. I mean, there's so much data, and most of it's free, that you can see out there that can really help you in your quest to put together a campaign, a strategy that'll be effective.
I agree. And I know kind of touching on what you had just mentioned too with the COVID, where, a lot of businesses have either slowed down in a large percentage slowed down, or perhaps even were forced to close down. And that is one of those times when that faucet tends to get turned off, and that's it's hurting them twice, because that's the time when things have slowed down that you really need to get the word out there, and you really need to put your image out there and put yourself in front of people so they don't forget about you just during that little slow time. Keep them coming in. So I think it's like canceling your health insurance because you lost, you're not working as much in the middle of a medical pandemic, right? Right. That's the last thing that you want to do. And I think that the marketing, it follows suit. I think it's right up there with that.
Well, I remember when, COVID really started to hit, the economy was being shut down. And I remember, watching TV, and an ad came on, and it was for an Audi car. And it was these happy skiers that were, they had just finished up a day on the slope, and, they took off their ski outfits and they grabbed a bottle of water. They drove down the snowy slope or the hill in their car, and they went to the après ski at the ski resort. And, it was just all great. Well, the ski resorts are closed. And, you can't even buy a car, from a dealership anymore because they're closed. So it just seemed very inappropriate. It was nice, but it was inappropriate. And then at the same time, Cadillac was running an ad, and, their ad was, well, we understand these are difficult times. If you need help with your payments, give us a call and we can help defer those payments. We're giving people some free OnStar. And, if you happen to be interested in a car, you can order it online and have it delivered. And I thought, what a contrast. here is somebody who got an ad out there that showed empathy, that showed a real situational awareness to what was going on. And it still was an ad for a Cadillac. They were showing Cadillacs, they were showing the cars driving around and in beautiful scenery and all that. But the message was something that was very clear. And I think we've seen a lot of brands pivot that way now. And there's a lot of empathy, even with the protests and whatnot that have been going on over the past week or two. You can see how some brands have very quickly shifted and put out an empathetic message there. And so there are ways to continue advertising. You just have to understand the environment that you're in, and you continue to build that trust. And then when it comes time to push your product a little bit harder or, push a more specific offer, that'll come. But these companies haven't stopped. They've just adjusted their tactics. And if you're a small business and you're not doing, advertising per se, now is a great time to be focusing on your infrastructure. What does your CRM look like? What does your database look like? I've lived in my current house for about 13 years now. I still receive multiple pieces of mail each week for the former resident. I mean, these email lists that these companies are using are at least 13 years old. And by the way, that person is deceased, so they're not even reflective of a live person anymore. And these are a lot of things that companies can be doing during a time when maybe you want to hold back a little bit more on some of your marketing expenses. You want to hold the line a little bit. That's fine. But there are still investments that you can make in marketing.
And that right back to the, pay attention and adapt. And that Cadillac story is perfect. Honestly, that's just absolutely perfect. They were paying attention to what their base needed and would understand, and they adapted to it. But still, at the same time, knowing that they couldn't, open up their locations, they could still order online, and they're still keeping their name alive and still keeping it in front of people. It's genius.
It is genius, and it builds that trust. Think about what the banks have done too. The banks got in a lot of hot water during the financial crisis and all the foreclosures and things, and there was a lot of hostility towards banks. When this whole thing started, look at how quickly many of the banks said, hey, do you need to have your mortgage payment deferred, your credit card? They tried to make it very easy. I thought they were very responsive to it. But they were trying to build that trust, right? Because they did not want to be the scapegoat for another sort of series of financial disasters, right? They wanted to be seen as part of the solution, not part of the problem. And, that's marketing.
Phenomenal. I just looked down. We are at our time here for the day for this session.
Hey,
man, that goes by fast. Yeah, it was fun.
Yes.
I love chatting with you. Again, I want to plug you as much as possible for your podcast as well, because this is a great conversation. I'd love to do this again with you. So for everybody listening, Eric, his podcast show is, go ahead, Eric, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you and listen to you.
Yeah. So the podcast is the Virtual CMO, and we talk about things like this on the podcast each week. So I hope you'll check us out on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to find out more about me, I can be found on Twitter at eDickmann. That's EDickmann at the end. And the website is 5echelon.com.
Thanks again for being a part of this, Eric. I really appreciate it. And I loved having this conversation with you. We're definitely going to have to do this again really, really soon.
Hey, I'd love to do that as well. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you bet. Everybody else, hey, thank you for joining the Biz Reveal this week. And we hope you got something from it. I know I sure did. And I'm going to have a lot more questions we can ask Eric in the upcoming weeks, have him back on the show again. Make sure you join him at the Virtual CMO podcast. Check him out. I'm looking forward to hearing more episodes from him as well. As far as we go with the Biz Reveal, guys, you can see us at thebizreveal.com. Listen to all the podcast sessions there. We also have a YouTube page as well that you can see the visuals and have the whole show in front of you. And then, of course, on all your podcast apps. Thanks for joining us this week. Till next time.